to the.
Good afternoon and welcome back. After the lunch break, we assemble here to explore yet another vibrant tradition, the Kanwariya Sampradaya, a symbol of devotion, pilgrim, and deep-rooted faith. We are honored to welcome our distinguished speaker, Srimati Leena Mehendale, former Additional Chief Secretary to Government of Maharashtra, retired, and Chairman Bharatiya Vidyavihar, Pune. A versatile personality whose contribution to literature, administration, and cultural thought are widely cherished. Madam, we warmly invite you for the afternoon's discourse. I request our director Shri G.N. Suresh sir to come on the dais and felicitate our esteemed guest. Thank you, sir. I request Shri Prakash Kamath to come on the dais and give brief introduction about our esteemed guest.
Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon to all. It's my privilege to introduce to you Srimati Leena Mehendale, presently serving as the chairperson of Bharatiya Bhavan, Pune, Kendra. A distinguished officer of the IAS, Maharashtra cadre, she had held several eminent positions during her distinguished career. She served as Additional Chief Secretary from 2008 to 2010, later as member of the Central Administrative Tribunal, Bengaluru from 2010 to 2013, and subsequently as a Chief Information Commissioner of Goa. She has also contributed as the Regional Council Chairperson of the Bhandarkar Oriental Research Institute, that is BORI. Academically, Srimati Mehendale is a powerhouse of learning, holding degrees in MSc Physics and Project Planning, MBA in Human Resources, and LLB. Her intellectual pursuits have translated into prolific writing. She has authored 20 books in Hindi and 15 in Marathi, spanning subjects from administration and science to children's literature and translations. Her recent acclaim comes from her monumental series of 90 lectures on Samagra Mahabharat delivered at Bhandarkar, which have been widely appreciated for their depth and insight. Beyond administration and scholarship, Srimati Mehendale has been deeply committed to social reform. Between 1983 and 1988, she worked tirelessly for the eradication of the Devadasi system in Maharashtra, ensuring the economic rehabilitation of nearly 170 women. Her exploration of Bharat's languages, culture, and socio-economic political dimensions has been both wide and profound. In the digital age, she continues to inspire as a popular YouTuber running two vibrant channels, Rashtra Chetana and Sanskrit TV. Today, we welcome a leader, reformer, scholar, and communicator whose life's work embodies dedication to knowledge, culture, and social justice. I now request Srimati Leena Mehendale to present her paper. Thank you.
Start. Namaskar. I start with my profound thanks to Bharatiya Bhavan, Bangalore, and my boss to Lord Krishna. Tvamadidevah Purushah Puranah Tvamasya Vishwasya Param Nidhanam Vetasi Vedyancha Parancha Dhama Tvaya Tatam Vishwamananta Rupa. I also pray to the Shiva and Shiva. Mandar Mala Lulitalakayai Kapal Malankita Shekharaya Divyambarayai Chadigambaraya Namah Shivayai Cha Namah Shivaya. Friends, I'm going to talk on a very unique feature of Indian culture, which is called Kanwad Parampara. There was a time when this Kanwad Parampara was very elaborately practiced throughout India. Now, for some reasons, mostly for the reason of distance maybe, it has now remained restricted to major parts of northern India, but the traces are still visible in the southern parts also. Kanwad Parampara is basically a Rudrabhishek to Shiva. It is a bowing to Shiva, and along with Shiva, there is also a bowing to Shakti. So, why do we feel that this kind of a parampara is important, and how it has originated, or why it has originated? So, as we know, our land is a land of Sanatan Sanskriti, and I feel that two characters are very, very important. They are Upasana, I have written, and Tirthatan. Shortly, I will deal with why I consider them to be very important. I'm not able to go to other slide. I think I'm pointing in the wrong direction. Yeah. Okay. Oh, I have to point here. Okay.
This is the first slide, right?
Yeah.
If you want to go next.
Yeah.
Next.
Okay.
This one.
Okay. Okay.
If you want to come back only.
Okay. As you see from the slide, the progress of our Sanskriti has started with two questions. Koham, who am I? And kimartham, why am I? The answer to Koham lies in the knowledge system, our Sanatan knowledge system. And that system tells that the answer to Koham is given through the Prakatya. Prakatya is something presents itself before our eyes. So all the Vedas are manifestations or Prakatya. They appeared before our eyes, that's why they are called Darshana. This is in contrast with the Western concept of development of knowledge, or they go by the principle of evolution, Uttarottar Pragati. So even it is the Uttarottar Pragati of the species. Whereas in Indian system, that is not the case. And who is it that is manifesting itself? So we have this concept of what existed before the existence came into existence. Okay? So सृष्टि के पहले क्या था? I will be speaking in English and Hindi, and you will pardon me for not knowing Kannada, except that sometimes I can do this jugglery of writing Kannada script. So this manifestation, before the manifestation happened, there was the concept of Ekarnava. Ekarnava is a vast ocean of tranquility, power, knowledge, and containing all the seeds of creation. We call it by name Chaitanya. We call it by name Nirgun, Nirakar. And it is further described in Ishavasyopanishad as Saparyagat Shukram Akayam Avranam. I think we all understand the meaning of these words. It is ever existing, Shukram, bright, Akayam, does not have a body, Avranam, does not have any spots on it, Asnaviram, doesn't need the communication through the snayu, like we have the snayus in our body to communicate between the Panchendriya, Jnanendriya and our mind. He does not require the snayu, therefore the name is Asnaviram. So there is an instant transmission of knowledge throughout the ocean that exists in the form of Chaitanya. Shuddham is Shuddha, extreme purity. Apapa Vidham, no sin can touch it. Kavi, one who can foresee into very long future distance. Manishi, who is capable of thinking great. Paribhuhu, it encompasses everything. And Swayambhu, it self-generating. And the shlok which I chose, which is Shiva and Shiva, because according to the tradition of Shiva Purana, the Shiva cult, the manifestation of this Chaitanya first appears in the form of Samba Sadashiva. So it is Sadashiva. Sadashiva is one who will always do Kalyanam, Mangalam, Shivam, and he is appearing along with Amba. Amba is mother. So his form is the manifestation of the Chaitanya is in the form of Samba Sadashiva. There is a man and a woman together, and then they together create the rest of the universe or cosmos, what we call Brahmand. And this Samba Sadashiva, we often see the painting of Samba Sadashiva as Ardha Narishwar, and it is a couple, it is a yugal, and it is the cause of the Jagatotpatti. If we run through our timeline of our Grantha Rachana, or how our texts reveal the possible timeline, what happened first, what happened later. So we have a word called Swayambhuva Manu, which is the most Addi of all the Manus. And we are now into the 7th Manu, which is Vaivasvat Manu. So several Manus have already occurred. And even before the Manu, even before the Swayambhu Manu, we always, it is described in our text that Swayambhu Manu also means Brahma, who further creates the Srishti. But who creates Brahma? So that is the Prakatya. Either it can be, you can consider it in the form of Samba Sadashiva, or according to the Vaishnava cult, it is the Kshirosagar Shayanam Vishnu. So after the Prakatya and Brahma starts creating Srishti, and you move on the timeline some more years or some more aeons, and you come to the event of Samudra Manthan. Samudra Manthan is an event which is very intricately linked to Shiva, because when the churning happened, first thing that came out was the halahal, Visha, which poison, which has the capacity of completely annihilating the entire Srishti, which is created. And then it becomes very, very important to first of all leave every other thing and first think of how do you save the Srishti from this halahal. So all the gods pray to Shiva. Although at the time of Samudra Manthan, we see the presence of both the Shiva and the Vishnu. So Vishnu is helping Samudra Manthan in a different way. He's taking the Kurma avatar, he's suggesting ways, he's giving energy to both the Daitya, the Asuras and the Devas, so that they are able to churn the Samudra. But the role given to Shiva is to save the world, to save the universe from annihilation at the very initial stage of Samudra Manthan. So all the promised Amrita can come only if the world is saved from this Visha, and that task comes on the shoulders of Shiva. We move a little more and we come to the event of Ganga Avatarana. So the Ganga, which is residing in Swarga, and the earth is having durbhiksha, akal, and is also thirsty, requires a lot of land, and most importantly, the 60,000 sons of the Emperor Sagar, they were all turned into ashes because of the wrath of Kapila Muni. And to give them moksha, the first, the King Sagar himself, then his another son, Anshuman, then his another Anshuman's son, Bhagirath, they all went for tapascharya, and Bhagirath was ultimately able to please Ganga and make her agree to come to earth for the rescue of his ancestors, as well as for giving solace to all the people on the earth. And then Ganga says, I can come, but I will be coming from such a distance or such a height, and if I just come to the earth, then because of the momentum, everything will again be destroyed. So there has to be somebody who can shoulder this huge momentum, which will be, which has to be sort of stopped or controlled or opposed. So who is the person, or who is the deity? So again, the task falls on Shiva, that he should be shouldering this burden of receiving Ganga and bringing down the momentum with which Ganga is coming on the earth. So Bhagirath again goes into tapascharya and he pleases Shiva, and Shiva agrees that, okay, I will spread all my jatas and then Ganga can come. And there is a very beautiful description in Mahimna Stotra, which says that, I'm not able to quote the verse right now, it's not coming to my mind, but the verse says that Ganga was in a way very much proud of her, the force with which she was going to come on the earth, and the beneficence that she was bringing along with her. So she was, a little bit, in her own ego. And she was little apprehensive also, how Shiva is going to tolerate this momentum. But when she enters the jatas of Shiva, the jatas are so widespread that there is no trace of Ganga. Ganga doesn't know how to come out of that whole janjal of the jatas, the whole network of the jatas. So Bhagirath again has to pray to Shiva, ki please release Ganga. So as little trickles, Ganga was allowed to come out of the jatas. And that's how you, if you go into geography, that's how you see the two streams, the two main streams of Ganga, one coming from Gangotri, which is Bhagirathi, and another coming from above the Devprayag site, which is called Alaknanda. So in small feeble streams, they keep coming out. There are other small streams like Nandakini, Mandakini, etc. And then they all join, and then they come up to Rishikesh, where we actually see the real Ganga in its real form. So then in this same lineage of Bhagirath, much later, we come to Shri Ram. And we come to the era of Ramayana, which is now sort of, it's a little debatable still, but about 50-60% there is an agreement that Ramayana must have occurred sometime about 7,000 to 10,000 years from today. And Mahabharata must have occurred around 5,000 years back. And one event that goes in favor of deciding the timeline for Mahabharata is our Yugabda Panchanga, which talks of 5,100 and today 27 years of Yugabda. And Yugabda happened somewhere contemporary with Mahabharata, either end of the Mahabharata war or the end of Krishna's life or the Pandavas coming on the throne. So there are various theories, but it's all within that same period, so around 5,000 years. And then we come to today, which is 2025 AD. Now, if we see this entire timeline in our history, we find that this cult of Shiva and Vishnu as the main protectors and benefactors for the whole world, that continues throughout the history of Sanatana Dharma. Now, I have gone through this whole history in order to explain what I mean by prakatya, manifestation. Now, couple that with the prakatya as well as upasana, and couple that with the concept of tirthatan. Now, there is a very, very elaborate description in our texts, like Mahabharata, like Skanda Purana, and even many more texts, which tell why tirthatan should be done, how and where tirthatan should be done, what are the main tirthas, and why they are the tirthas. But if we look at it from a very modern angle, I think that there are really some very practical uses of tirthatan, such as knowing our country's geography, knowing from the language which is gathered in other parts of the country, imparting our knowledge to the people in other parts of the country, transmitting the paramparas and sanskritis between the different parts of our country, build up some kind of synergy. Then also know the glory of our ancestors, put them in folklores, recite them, all these things which make us into a Rashtra. All those elements of a Rashtra, of a progressive Rashtra, of a Vicharashil Rashtra, they come from the fact that we have this parampara of tirthatan. And if I may digress slightly, we find the mention of a typical sect called Yayavar. And we also have this Vedavakya called Charaivaiti, Charaivaiti, Charaivaiti. Even we just heard Buddha's life history some time back, and his Upadesh is also, "Oh my bhikkhus, do travel across the country, Charayvaiti," he also said Charayvaiti. So this Yayavar sect, as I was saying, there is this story of Jaratkaru and his son Astik in Mahabharata. And this Jaratkaru, who was a Yayavar, and his Yayavari tapasya was so powerful that at one place he also is telling his wife that you must know that Surya cannot go to Astachal without taking arghya from me, because it is my practice to offer arghya to Surya. So if I am sleeping, if I am resting, and if I am not offering my arghya at the right time, then Surya will have to wait till I give arghya. So this is the kind of power which could be developed when he did his practice of Yayavari. So all this tells us that we had this great tradition of not just going for Tirthatan, but also encouraging others to go for Tirthatan. Through the Tirthatan, we are also able to create places of energy storage. You know, we talk of Jagruta Devasthan. What does it mean? It means that in that particular building or that particular temple, that particular environment, that particular surrounding, there is some kind of storage of, you can call energy, or you can call storage of Chaitanya. There is this Chaitana Shakti which is able to communicate with you if you are in tune with that particular deity, or you are in tune with the whole concept of this communication. So we also have this concept of 7 chakras within our body. And we say that these 7 chakras are, again, within the body, they are the storehouse of immense energy. One parallel example I can quote from physics is that you have this nucleus, you have the electrons, and together they make an atom, and so many atoms will come together and manifest as a matter before us. And they all, this entire manifestation is, very, very calm, quiet, very harmless. But the moment you try to provoke the energy within the nucleus, you will have something like Hiroshima atom bomb. So there are powerhouses hidden or balanced within several places. Atom can be considered one, our body can be considered one. Similarly, I think that when we talk of society, when we talk of Rashtra Purush, we have this concept of energy storages or Jagruta Devasthans, and that's how we get the word Jyotirlinga. We have these Dvadasha Jyotirlingas for Shiva. We also have this concept of Sthana Jagruti, which is not restricted only to Jyotirlinga. Like it is said, it transcends. Mama bhaktaha yatra gayante tatra tisthami naradaha. Wherever my bhaktas will come together and do the chanting, I will be there. And I will be there not just to listen to the chanting, but I will be there to do some such act which is beneficial to not only that group which is chanting, but to the public in general. So that group chanting will evoke good nature, good feelings, and positivity in the whole ecosystem. So, so even if we think from that angle, then Tirthatanas, it is also said that when you go to a particular Tirtha, and if you do the loud chanting of the Nam, loud means not through loudspeakers, but like the normal talk, like I am talking now. So just this much volume only, or slightly lesser also. But if you keep doing chanting, then this whole sound energy, which is not just any noise, it is in the form of mantras. So there is a certain modulation to the channeling of that energy. And then that energy gets stored into that ecosystem. And it remains stored for a very, very long time till there is a requirement of its utilization. So again, talking from physics angle, we see all forms of energy, light, heat, electricity, magnetism, gravitation, etc. But many physicists and very learned physicists believe that ultimately the final form of energy to which all these other forms will sort of convert and come to a rest is the form of sound. So sound is a form of energy which has kind of an eternity to it. And that concept, I think, also applies to, these are all my conjectures, I must say. Some of this particular slide is, I haven't done enough textbook reading, so I cannot say that this is taken from some textbook or other. I cannot authenticate it from textbooks, but this is how I try to explain what is this concept of Jyotirlinga or Jagrut Devasthan, and how a particular Devasthan comes to a certain stage where it can do good to the people who come with their prayers. So now, Kavod Yatra is partly to be seen as this whole tradition of Tirthatan, but it's also to be remembered as the enactment of Gangavataran. Like we have this parampara of celebrating Diwali. Why do we celebrate Diwali? Because we think that it was a very big event in the life of not just Ram, but in the life of this entire country, that Ravan was killed and Ram came to Ayodhya, and all the people in Ayodhya, they were so happy that they lighted thousands of lamps. And in the memory of that event, that festivity of Ram returning back to Ayodhya, and the celebration that was made by all the Ayodhya Vasis to celebrate his coming, we are still celebrating Diwali. So in a way, we are, as a society, as a community, we are trying to relive that particular event which was then lived by the Ayodhya Vasis. Similarly, this event of Gangavataran, the Ganga doing Rudrabhishek, that is the event which we try to celebrate, and we celebrate it through this procedure of doing Abhishek on the Shiva. Because the Kavod Yatra or Kavod Parampara that exists today, the rule, it follows two rules. many rules actually, but I will count the important ones. One rule is that you have to pick up the water from Ganga river only where Ganga is Uttar Vahini. Okay? So there are 3 spots from where you can pick up the Ganga water. One is at Gangotri, one is at Haridwar, and one is in Bihar. A place called Sultanganj has now developed as a very convenient spot where there are ghats are built up, etc., etc. So you can take Ganga water from there. But that is the place where Ganga is Uttar Vahini for quite some distance. So the parampara says, take the Ganga water from any of these 3 places and bring it to either a prominent Jyotirlinga or a prominent Shiva temple, or the Shiva temple of your village, or the Shiva temple inside your house. So all the 4 methods are allowed. I just tried to put some definition for parampara. It is a certain methodological methodology which is practiced by a group of people and which takes forward the societal knowledge, history, art, music, and in a way that helps in the preservation and sustenance of Sanskriti. So we have this parampara of taking the water from Ganga and bringing it to a particular Shiva temple. The Kanwad Yatra, which these days is performed in a very, very large number, is at the Vaidyanath temple, which is located in the present Jharkhand. It is one of the Jyotirlingas, and it is the only Jyotirlinga where you find the temple dedicated to Shiva and Shakti together. So all the other Jyotirlingas which we have in the country, other 11 Jyotirlingas, it's only the Shiva Linga. But Vaidyanath Dham is a particular Jyotirlinga where you are having the Shiva Shakti together. Vaidyanath Dham is also considered to be the place where you can get a complete Roga Mukti. So Vaidya refers to Ayurvedic practitioner or doctor, and it is considered that Ayurveda as a branch of knowledge has the ancestry in Shiva himself. So from Shiva, the knowledge comes to Shukracharya, who is the holder of Sanjivani Vidya. And from Shukracharya, it gets disseminated to other people. After Shukracharya leaves the side of Daityas, and he declines to be the guru of Daityas anymore. That happens sometime during the Kacha Devayani story, if you people have heard about it. So I will not go into that. So Vaidyanath temple is also, the Shiva is worshipped here as a Vaidya. This is nearly a 200 kilometer long Kanwad Yatra, which is normally performed in 2 days. And people can rest for the night. The only rule is that you cannot put the Kanwad on the ground. So, but you can put it on some elevated place. These days, some of the Kanwad Yatris also do the Yatra by a vehicle, conveniently a truck or something, but generally not this Bihar Kanwad Yatra, which is Sultanganj to Vaidyanath Dham. This is also concept of dark coward. So, you know, the postal service was started in our country that used to be called Dak Seva. So Dak is the word coming from the postal service, and when you have to send the Dak to another place, then the tradition was that somebody who is wanting to deliver the Dak or the post to other place, if he is not able to complete the whole distance rapidly, then he will run up to a certain point and then hand over the letters to another person who will then run and take. So it will be, for the message, it will be almost non-stop. It will be going from one place to another place. So that is the concept of Dak. So Kavad Yatra, here, there is a concept of Dak Kavad Yatra. That means the person will not stop for anything. I remember this very famous dialogue of film Bahubali. He says, "Pav rukne nahi chahiye." You know, when that lady is performing the traveling to the temple. So like that, "Pav rukne nahi chahiye." So not many people are capable of doing this, but when I was going through the literature, I found this gentleman, 72-year-old, and he will soon become, he is already 191 yatras he has done, which are called Dak Kavad, means non-stop from Sultanganj to here, and it takes about 16 to 18 hours. I have written it in Hindi, so I'll just read it so that understanding is a little better. बाबा वैद्यनाथ धाम ज्योतिर्लिंग देश का एकमात्र ज्योतिर्लिंग है जो शक्तिपीठ भी है. यहाँ it is said कि when the different parts of the body of Sati fell, and we have this 52 Shaktipeeth of Sati, of Shakti. The heart of Sati came to Vaidyanath Dham. So here is a Shaktipeeth. So इस लिंग को मनोकामना लिंग भी कहा जाता है. The name is मनोकामना लिंग, and it is believed that you get whatever you want. And during the month of Shravan, lakhs of people. This year, they say it was around 13 lakh. But what is more important is that every day throughout the year, at least one coward will come to Vaidyanath. That is how some people have distributed the task among themselves as a group, so that at least one coward must come to Vaidyanath Dham every day throughout the year. But largely we all know, and you must have listened to the Varkari Parampara also from Maharashtra. So this Varkari Parampara, where again it's a big Tirtha Yatra, you know, from various places in Maharashtra, Carnatic to Pandharpur. That's also on foot. That's also in Shravan. So Shravan is a very particular, very sacred month for the Sanatanis. And Savan is the month for both. In Pandharpur, it is the Vaishnava cult. His Kavad Yatra is a Shaiva cult. But for both of them, the Abhishek, I think there is no Abhishek in Pandharpur. Abhishek is only associated with Shiva. It is also, it's also there mentioned in the folklores of this place that after returning to Ayodhya, then Ram, Lakshman and Sita also undertook this Tirtha Yatra of Prayagraj, then Gaya, where you do the Pindadan for the Pitar, and then they took the water from Uttarvahini Ganga and came to Vaidyanath Dham and did the Jalabhishek. So I have just managed some of these pictures for you to relish. They are all available on the internet. This is Sultanganj, where you can see the whole crowd which is assembled here to take the water from Ganga. And in last about 10 years, government has also done lot of, created lot of facilities for these people. So more ghats are created in Sultanganj. And the road from Sultanganj to Vaidyanath Dham temple, it's not a motorable road because you don't want motors to drive on that road. It's a road meant for walking, but a lot of this soft soil is spread every year before Shravan so that the Tirthayatris have less trouble. This is how people pick up the water and start their yatra to Vaidyanath Dham. Ladies groups are also there. Mostly the ladies will travel as a group, but very often you can find even individual ladies who are walking along with some other people in the group, maybe their relatives and all. But mostly the ladies go jointly. He is a small kid. I was told he is only about 10 years old, but doing this 120 kilometers of yatra with the kavod. And this kavod is made in a very typical way. There is a bamboo, and for the shoulders, so a lot of layers are done so that it doesn't hurt. And then the weight is balanced on both the sides. And if looking at his age, obviously he is carrying a very small quantity. But how much quantity you carry is not of much importance. Important is that you do the Jalabhishek. This is the procession, one typical aerial photograph of the procession going to Vaidyanath Dham during the peak time. This, as I said, good walkable roads are constructed by government. A lot of tree plantation is also done. This is a typical one person. He is going alone, and he has been going alone for many days. I think he goes every month to Vaidyanath Dham, and he carries all his clothes, etc., also on the same bamboo. And you can see here. Here's this covered here. These are the two covers on this side, and there are two covers on this side. This is another very big group, almost reaching the temple. And then this is little unfortunate. They have to all stand in the queue. Sometimes the waiting can be whole 10, 12 hours also. Now, as I said, a lot of Kavod Yatras will start at Gangotri. So once upon a time, there was the practice of collecting Gangotri water and bring it to Rameshwaram all the way. And in Maharashtra, when we read the Eknath Gathas, we come across many descriptions where Eknath has undertaken this Kavod Yatra from from Gangotri to Rameshwaram in a group. And there is very elaborate description of that Kavod Yatra which Eknath has undertaken. And that was, I think, 15th century. So now, not in such a big way, but about 10 years back, I saw a group of Bengali people taking the collecting water at Gangotri, and when I asked them, are you going to some place in Bengal for doing the Jalabhishek? They said, no, we are going to Rameshwaram. So if you look at the geography of the country, Calcutta, Gangotri, all the way to Rameshwaram. So this is how the concept of national integrity, national integration was maintained in this country throughout the several years of civilization. And this type of Kavad Yatra is still performed, I am told. And this is some recent picture of that Kavad Yatra, although very small, maybe just 2-3 groups may be doing it, because it's a very long yatra. And the Eknath yatra, the yatra which Eknath took, it took him 9 months. That's the description. So, but as I mentioned, the group which I saw coming from Calcutta, they were doing part of the traveling via railways. So people have found some shortcuts also, but that's all, to me, it's all acceptable as long as they keep up the concept of, uniting the north and the south through this method. Then there is another yatra where water is taken at Haridwar and brought all the way up to Devdhar. But this is also about 1300 kilometers, so, and it takes a long time. So generally, you will not see many groups doing this Kavad Yatra. Then you have from Rishikesh, from Gangotri, you come to Rishikesh, and there is a Neelkantheshwar temple, and this yatra is about 250 to 300 kilometers. You can complete it in 4-5 days. So a lot of people do this. But if you have to do Jalabhishek at Rishikesh, then you cannot take water from Haridwar, although Haridwar is very close, because then you will be going upstream of Ganga. So you have to come downstream. So you have to come from Gangotri to Rishikesh, not from Haridwar to Rishikesh. I've just listed the 12 Jyotirlingas. Now, I found this picture also on the internet. 51 feet long, they have made this covered. And all these umbrellas that you see, they have the Shiva Linga underneath. So you can see this is a Shiva Linga, this is Shiva Linga, this is Shiva Linga. So about 21 Shiva Lingas are there in this. And this yatra is going from Katni to Baijnath Dham. Of course, they travel up to Sultanganj, they travel by railway, but every year they take it. And Katni, as you know, is in Madhya Pradesh. Similarly, although I don't have picture here, but there are people who are coming from Haridwar to a place in Akola. Akola is a place in Maharashtra near Nagpur. So not the whole Gangotri to Rameshwaram, but at least Haridwar to Akola, some small part. That is still, and I think this year they are completing 75th yatra, so they are having a better celebration. This is another typical way how, if you want to carry more water, then this is how, at the back you will see, they have tried to make it comfortable, and then they are able to carry these many, 10 of them. So you carry a lot of water, and that water is also, it's quite a weight, but people undertake this sankalpa and complete it. This is a very typical, like we have the Ganesh Utsav, but tableaus, you can say. So sometimes not everybody will do this, because this only very, when there is a big group and people are more enthusiastic, but they will make very good tableaus like this. This is another tableau having Nandi and Ganesh, and then Shiva. And Ganesh is acting as the Sarathi of Shiva in this picture. This is, as I said, sometimes you can find girls also, not in groups, but out of their own enthusiasm, they undertake this journey. This is a scene from Haridwar, where a lot of Kanwariyas are waiting. They have already collected water, so they are waiting to pack their kavad. This is another picture of kavad. These are some of the pictures. So, along with Kavad Yatra, I feel I should mention about 2-3 other practices. Like there is a practice that when Kedarnath temple gets closed, then what we call Bhoga Murti, that is brought to a place called Ukhimat. I hope all of you understand, but I'll take 2 minutes to explain what is a Bhoga Murti. See, in the Saguna Upasana, we believe that the idol or the murti has a prana in it. So for the murti, we do the snanam every day. We change the clothes, we offer naivedya, okay? We offer some time to sleep, rest, like that. So we all believe, those who do Sagun worship, they believe that the murti is actually behaving like us. So it needs to be given food, it needs to be given clothes, it needs to be given a bath, it needs time to rest, like that. So when the Kedarnath temple is closed for 6 months, then that idol, which is otherwise offered a daily worship, that you cannot discontinue the daily worship. So the idol, that idol is called the Bhoga Murti, and it is brought to Ukhimat. So when you have another ceremony, when the Kedarnath temple will be opened, just 4 days before, the Murti is taken from Ukhimat to Kedarnath in a doli or palki, and they do a 4-day journey. So it is also, it's not Kavad Parampara, but it's something like that. When you are carrying the Bhoga Murti in a doli and on foot, traveling all the distance. So first day you travel from Ukhimat to Guptakashi, second day Guptakashi to Fata, then Fata to Gaurikund, then Gaurikund to Kedarnath. And I was very tempted to mention this because in one of my, in Mussoorie, when we complete the IAS, we are required to undergo training for 1 year in Mussoorie. And during that training, there is a 20-day period when we are supposed to go through, very difficult terrains in the country. So sometimes people go to Gangotri, Yamunotri, Kedarnath, Badrinath. There is a military attachment to, etc., etc. So when I was on that tour, I happened to see this doli traveling from Ukhimat to Kedarnath. So those people who want to participate in this, they are also allowed to walk with the doli for whatever distance you want to walk. So our group wanted to walk along with the doli, so we walked for 3 to 4 kilometers. Then we dropped out. So this is the doli where the deity is taken. And yeah, I would also like to mention this another very typical tradition in South India, where we always associate Shiva with the Pancha Mahabhut. Shiva is also called Bhutnath. So Bhutnath means he is the Nath or master of the Pancha Mahabhutas, earth, water, Agni, Vayu, Akash. So we have these temples in South India which are dedicated to one Mahabhut each. It needs to be closed. Now, this is another very important concept associated with Shiva. The Bija mantra of Shiva is Bam. And in Ayurveda and even in the Kundalini Parampara, it is believed that each akshar of our Sanskrit Varnamala, K, Kha, G, Gh, Ng, Ch, Ch, J, Jh, all of them, they are the Bija mantras, and if chanted, then each one has the power to take care of the illness associated with some part of our body. So this Bam is associated with the urinary tract, and this Bija mantra, Bam, 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 it has a good effect, a curing effect on gout and even the other forms of arthritis, which are caused by the imbalance of uric acid in our body. Similarly, each letter has good impact on some part of the body, but Bam is the Bija mantra for Shiva. And therefore, those people who are doing the Kanwariya Yatra, all along the route, they will be chanting Bam Bam Bole, Bam Bam Bole, Bam Bam Bole. So, and there are a lot of songs also written with Bam and Bam Bam as a theme. There is a tradition in Bengal where they write out a whole story on a long cloth, which is called patua or pat. And then it is rolled. And then the actor will come on the stage and it will start unrolling the roll. And so two lines, 3 lines, 4 lines will start appearing, and then he will narrate that story and he will also enact that story. This is tradition, patua tradition in Bengal, and which is mostly they narrate the story through hand paintings. And most of these stories, many of the stories are dedicated to Shiva. And so these patua stage performances are also done during this Kanwariya Yatra. Then we have a great poet called Vidyapati who wrote in Maithili language. And it is considered that the Bengali language is a new or a modern version of Maithili, at least from the poetry side. So Vidyapati wrote some, it's a very, very large number of compositions he wrote on Shiva. He was a Shiva devotee. And the compositions are called Nachari, and they are dedicated to Shiva. And they are played in Mahashivratri also during the Kanwariya Yatra. And it is said about Vidyapati that his compositions were so much liked by Shiva that Shiva wanted to keep on listening to his compositions. So decided to take up the job of a servant in Vidyapati's house. And Then one day he suddenly disappeared. And then Vidyapati was also so attached to him that he wrote a very beautiful bhajan, Ugna re mura kata galare. You can sometimes, if you like, you can listen to it on the YouTube. And then Mahadeva came and gave darshan to Ugna. So this is how the Bengali folk songs are inspired by Vidyapati. The typical themes for bhajans during the Kanwad Yatra is Shiva ki Barat. When Shiva goes to marry Parvati, there is a very elaborate description of his Barat in Shiva Puran, and lots of folk songs are written based on that description. Similarly, the fact that Smashan is called the abode of Shiva. So many songs are written on this theme. Then Ashutosh, one who gets pleased very quickly, and it is always mixed with the Bhasmasur Katha, because Bhasmasur did a very little tapascharya, but Shiva was very happy and immediately gave him the blessing कि किसी के सर पर तुम हाथ रखो, जाके सर पर हाथ धरूं मैं, होए भस्म नर नारी. And Bhola Bhandari was such a Bhola Bhandari कि he gave him this blessing. And Bhasmasur said, okay, let me try it by putting my hand on your head only. And then Shiva didn't know what to do. So then Vishnu comes, and then in the form of Mohini Rupam. So this is the second time Vishnu has taken the Mohini Rupam. And this Mohini tells Bhasmasur, oh, Bhasmasur instantly likes her and asks her to marry him. So she says, okay, but I have taken a vow that whoever is able to compete with me in dance, I will marry that person. So I will do the dance and you should follow me. And if you are following correctly, then I will declare you as a successful dancer. So the dance goes on, and at one point, this Mohini puts her own hand on her head, and Bhasmasur also does the same thing, and then he is burnt alive. So this katha is also in one of the folk songs of Kanwad Yatra. Then this Nilkantha katha of Vishwaprashan. These are some of the themes. There is a Ugna Mahadev temple at a place called Bhagwatipur near Darbhanga. And Darbhanga is also the place where I have done my schooling and my education up to BSc. So I was very happy and very tempted to put all this in this slide for you to appreciate. Thank you.
Thank you, madam, for tracing the spiritual ethos and cultural vibrancy of Kanwariya tradition with such clarity. We now move into the heart of Indian devotional philosophy, the world of Bhakti, its origins, its evolution, and its synthesis across countries. Our honored scholar for this session is Shri G.N. Devy, Professor of Eminence and Director of the School of Civilisation, Somaiya Vidyavihar University, Mumbai. A thinker, writer, and cultural visionary whose voice has shaped contemporary discourse. Sir, we invite you to lead us into the profound journey of Bhakti, its genesis and synthesis. I request our director, Shri H.N. Suresh sir, to come on dais and felicitate our esteemed guest. Thank you, sir. I invite Shri Prakash Kamath on the dais to introduce our esteemed guest.
Anjappa. Anjappa. Height just. Height just. Self height just. Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon to all. It's my privilege to introduce Professor Ganesh Narayan Devy, one of India's most respected academics, public intellectuals, and cultural visionaries. Professor Devy has devoted his life to literature, linguistics, and the preservation of India's extraordinary cultural diversity. He is the founder of the Bhasha Research and Publication Center in Baroda and the Adivasi Academy in Tejgarh institutions that have become pioneering platforms for conserving indigenous languages, tribal knowledge, and oral traditions. Professor Devy's academic journey began at Shivaji University, where he earned his BA, MA, and PhD in English literature, followed by advanced study at Leeds University in the United Kingdom. His teaching career has spanned Maharaja Sayajirao University in Baroda, the Dhirubhai Ambani Institute in Gandhinagar, and visiting professorships at leading institutions across India. Today, he serves as Professor of Eminence and Director of the School of Civilisation at Somaiya Vidyavihar University in Mumbai. He has been a builder of movements, founding the denotified and nomadic tribes rights action group, the People's Linguistic Survey of India, and Dakshinayana, a collective of writers for freedom of expression. His work has given voice to communities long marginalized and ensured their languages and traditions are preserved for future generations. Professor Devy's contributions have been recognized with some of the highest honors. He was awarded the Padma Shri in 2014, the UNESCO Lingua Pax Award in 2011, and the Sahitya Academy Award for his landmark book After Amnesia. He has also received the Prince Claus Award from the Netherlands and numerous Lifetime Achievement Awards from across India. His scholarship has been enriched by prestigious fellowships, including Fulbright at Yale and the Jawaharlal Nehru Fellowship, leading to influential works such as number 1 in Another Tongue, number 2 of Many Heroes, and number 3 Countering Violence. What makes Professor Devy truly remarkable is the way he bridges scholarships with activism. He has shown us that knowledge is not confined to books. It can transform societies, empower communities, and preserve the soul of a nation. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Professor G.N. Devy, a scholar of distinction, a custodian of India's cultural heritage, and a voice of conscience in our times. I now request Professor G.N. Devy to present his paper. Thank you so much.
Prakash ji, all eminent persons from the Bharatiya Vidyapith, Bengaluru, Vidya, Bhavan, Bengaluru, ladies and gentlemen, you had a tremendous feast of knowledge and culture over the last 11 days. Today is the 12th day. And I would like to publicly put on record my personal gratitude for organizing something of this scope, this scale. Let me state the reasons for that. This extensive articulation of dignity and love during the second millennium in India, stretching all the way from Kerala to Assam, from Orissa to Rajasthan, is known among literary scholars by the term Bakthi, as a Bakthi period. These 1,000 years cultural history of India has received a raw deal, both at the hands of the British scholars and at the hands of Indian scholars as well. My reasons are for thanking you. First, when European countries started colonizing other continents, Europe had just about gone through a great turmoil, philosophical, political, cultural, and social. To sum up that turmoil, I can use the phrase the conflict between the Catholics and the Protestants. The Catholic view of the world was based on the idea that this world has its own logic and grammar. It has its own self-governance. It has its wisdom, and they called it the natural law. The Protestants, who had rebelled against the Catholic Church, brought forward the view that humans are important, and justice and dignity and equality are very important. Now that was a long debate, fought over 2 centuries, but by the time the Portuguese, the French and the British started, and even Germans and the Dutch started venturing out to colonize other continents, they thought that what they were missing, that is the spiritual core of being, what they were missing in Europe, possibly can be attributed to other societies. And right, left, center, they started describing the indigenous people in the Americas and Australia, New Zealand, in Africa, and Indians here in South Asia as hugely spiritual communities. That is, they were trying to locate elsewhere what they had missed. And there is a lot of historical research material available on this particular interpretation. So it is not something that I have made up. European scholars and travelers started describing India as a place suffused with spirituality. And in the course of our getting colonized, we too imbibe that view, while the reality surrounding us during the 17th century and the 18th century did not exactly would not have allowed us to describe ourselves as hugely spiritual. But that image, excessively spiritual, if Europe was materialistic, then if the West was materialistic, the East was spiritual, including Japan, which cannot boast of a long spiritual tradition as such. And China, of course, China, Japan, India. I think if we had looked at the medieval times more closely ourselves, we could have corrected this particular view. But this particular view that I mentioned resulted in Indians believing that their very remote ancient past was only spiritual, that there was no cruelty, that there was no inequality, that there was no exploitation. And that's a slightly unrealistic attitude of looking at the past. We mythologize our past, and we took our myths as if they were history. And even now, even very high officers and high scholars, they talk of myths as if they're part of our history. Now, this particular focus on bhakti can introduce some sense of balance in the view about the past. And that's why I want to congratulate you and thank you. Secondly, historians themselves, Indian historians, have accepted an intellectual habit, intellectual fashion of proposing history exactly in terms of history as it was proposed for England. That is, England had an ancient history, medieval history, and modern history. And that England had proposed for itself in terms of the linguistic shifts in England, because they could not have understood English language of Beowulf, is 10th century or 8th century English epic. They could not have understood language spoken before Spencer and Shakespeare, medieval English. They understood only modern English. So the history also became a threefold history: ancient, medieval, modern. Now, for a place like South Asia, India, the past has been far, far too long. And probably we should have proposed an eightfold or tenfold or fivefold history. But we accepted this ancient, medieval, and modern. And having accepted that view of history, we also accepted a statement by Sir William Jones made in 1787, when Jones discovered that there were lots of similarities between Latin and Greek, Persian and Sanskrit, Iranian, ancient Iranian, Persian and Sanskrit. He said he would like to go back and explore all the similarities to show how the Indo-European languages form one single family. And in that lecture, a very short lecture, he said in so many words, my job, I mean, William Jones said, James said, my job is to go from the 11th century AD backwards as far as possible. But he left out the period after the 11th century as a blank, while Iranian, that is Persian, Sanskrit, and its daughters, Indo-Aryan languages, had continued. Having left that particular period blank, the British discourse immediately took advantage and started saying that India was hugely civilized at one time. But then came the Muslims, completely, complete falsification of our history. And then there was nothing but collapse, nothing but ruination, nothing but tragedy. We imbibe that view of history as well. The entire Bhakti period counters that view. And that's why I want to thank you for thinking of Bhakti as an expression of civilizational contemplation and social reformation. So that's my second reason for thanking you. There have been very few occasions in India when discussion of various states and 1,000 years history has been undertaken from a positive angle during the last 60 or 70 years. So this is a unique event that you organize. My third reason is, After William Jones and the emergence of Sanskrit as some kind of miracle of the ancient times, even while there were studies of Dravidian languages by Kettle in Dharwad or by Ellis, somehow the Dravidian language family came to be seen as slightly less dignified, less respectable than Indo-Aryan in the minds of the people. When one talks of civilization and culture of India, one does not first speak of Dravidian civilization and then Indo-Aryan. While the fact of history is, and genetics has shown us, that humans, Homo sapiens, have been dwelling in southern part of South Asia at least for the last 65,000 years. If you want to see the last piece of research on that, please read Tony Joseph. Tony Joseph is not a European man, he is from Kerala. Otherwise somebody might say, oh, these Western scholars, they are evil-minded. Tony Joseph's Early Indians. And all the genetic research shows that out of Africa people landed in India after their first migration, first in South India. So really, when we talk of Indian civilization, we should be beginning with Dravidic rather than Indo-Aryan. And that is not done. But when we speak of Bhakti, we are required to begin with Tamil Nadu. And I feel happy that at least some justice is being done to that fact, which is a historically and scientifically established fact. For giving that opportunity, I want to thank you. Finally, we all know that India has received two very deep wounds. The soul of India has received two very deep wounds, which are not as yet healed. And I hope a day comes when that will happen. One, of course, I mentioned colonialism, and that has interfered seriously with our ways of knowing ourselves. But the other wound is far more serious, and that is, in this subcontinent, a social structure evolved where humans were treated even worse than animals. And women were treated as if they were cows or buffaloes. Manusmriti, for instance, mentions that all the cows belonging to the entire earth belong to a Brahmin. Complete, unrestricted, unchallengeable right. My job here is not to criticize Manusmriti. My job is to remind myself that the Bhakti period was the period when Indian thinkers, poets, saints raised a voice against the Varna system. Varna was a dehumanizing system. I hang my head down in shame when I think of Varna system, where there is a pack of human beings and some are born as superior and others are born as inferior. That's absolute nonsense. It goes against any idea of minimum humanity. When we speak of Bhakti period, we speak of the reclamation of dignity by potters, by cobblers, by weavers, people of all kinds. And I think I want to thank you for giving that opportunity for so many speakers. When you ask them to perform Meera or Kabir or Tukaram here. And when lectures were delivered on the Lingayat, Basveshwar and Akkama Devi, and the Alwars, and of course Shankar Dev, and Krishna Chaitanya, and Surdas, and Tyagaraj, Narsi Mehta. I think this was a unique celebration of the dignity of humans as humans. So for so many reasons, I want to thank you. If in India we conceptualize our past, particularly our modern history, if we conceptualize it as beginning with the Bakthi period, we might be able to understand our modern times far, far better. Rather than imagining our modern times as if, miraculously coming to us with the arrival of the Portuguese or the British. Because these modern times are marked by claim of humans as everybody deserving of dignity. And Bhakti period made that claim in a big way. There were certain methods that the Bhakti poets followed in making that claim. And the first method was to disown a language of inheritance. That is, in other words, they disowned Sanskrit as language of culture and inheritance. Please think of this. In Europe, Latin declined and French, Spanish, Portuguese, other languages emerged. With political changes taking place, and particularly decline of the Roman Empire, the later day Roman Empire. In India, Sanskrit perhaps would have continued even beyond the 9th century as a living language, as a vibrant language. It did not, because and other languages came up, because there appears to be a strong attitude towards that language taking shape during the 9th and the 10th century. Please allow me to give a brief overview of what the Sanskrit language has been. There are many misconceptions about it. There is a huge amount of scholarly literature, and where Madam is the director now, chairperson, Bhandarkar Institute has a vast library on the past of the Sanskrit language. And many other Indological institutions have that. Humans have spoken languages for the last 70,000 years. Because language made humans, distinct from other animals. This claim is not a mythological claim. It is based on scientific works. Homo sapiens developed language as a weapon, weaponized language, and made their movement possible. They had arrived in India and gone through these cycles of first being hunter-gatherers. I'm talking of humans and not of gods and things like that. Humans like you and me. They've gone through a cycle of first being hunter-gatherers, then being pastoral nomads, and all these things are related to food supply, food shortage, and so on. But I won't elaborate on this. Why hunters become gatherers and why they become pastoralists and then nomads and then pastoralists and start cultivating animals and then agrarians. And they had established anthropologically small groups of people spread over India having hundreds of languages. Please remember, if you look at the words related to agriculture implements and methods of agriculture in any part of India, you do not find in those, for those things, words coming from either Sanskrit or from Persian or from English. These languages predate Persian, English, Persian, and Sanskrit. Sanskrit, which is a branch of a larger language family called the Indo-European language family, had started developing in the Eurasian steppes And a branch went to Europe, another branch went to, West Asia, became Iranian, and a branch came to us. A small thread of that also went to China and came to be known as Tocharian, but it died around 1000 AD, at around 1000 AD, 1000 years before our time. When Sanskrit arrived here, India had agrarians and pastoral nomads had been migrating. I mean, in Maharashtra, this Wari, which is now seen as a Vaishnava festival, actually the pastoral nomads, based on the cycle of monsoon, had been making trips between the coastal area and the interior of Maharashtra for the millennia soon after Holocene. Holocene is about 12,000 years before our time. So soon after that, the nomads have been wandering over this land. The arrival of Sanskrit around 1400 before Christ, about 500 years after Harappa and Mohenjo-daro and the Indus civilization had declined, first created literature of nomads, which was the Rigveda, and fantastic literature, extremely well organized, with more than 10,000 mantras, about more than 1,000 mandalas, 10 books, and with absolutely mind-boggling mnemonics. That is, if one wanted to remember, it was possible to remember all that. And that was remembered. It was oral traditions continued. Around the 7th century before Christ, when the Rigveda by then is around 7 centuries old, and 7 centuries is a long time, very long period, which had come down in the form of oral recitation, memorization, and re-rendition, was sought to be kind of brought into an order. So we have on one side Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, but on the other side there is Yaska, who wanted to systematize the Rigveda. One of the greatest scholars of our times, India, modern times, who had a very deep intuitive access to Rigveda was Sri Aurobindo. I hope you'll agree with me. He's written a book of essays on the secret of the Veda. And in that he has a very strange kind of sentence which made me think a lot. He says, oral tradition preserves by obscuring. That is, oral tradition does not keep everything exactly as it is. In the case of Rigveda, that did not happen. The original pronunciation, the words, the sandhis were handed down ditto because of the metrical machinery of the Vedas, which allowed that kind of memorization without the slightest flaw. Aurobindo's argument is that while people could recite the Vedas, they did not actually understand what they meant. The symbolic meaning was lost. Etymological meaning remained. And Yaska gave in Nigantu, that is what Yaska gave. Aurobindo says that the symbolic meaning was lost. And thereafter, this is Aurobindo's view, not my view. Aurobindo says thereafter, people started wondering at the Rigveda as if it contains magic. Please, read Aurobindo's essays on the Vedas. If you like to dismiss those, dismiss, you're free. I'm only reproducing what he said. The number of people who spoke Sanskrit was extremely limited. There is a good study of Indian populations in the past by a man called Dyson. Again, this evil, don't say evil Western man, science has some merit. And the people who spoke Sanskrit, obviously they did not speak Dravidian, Proto-Dravidian, they did not speak the Proto-Assamese and so on. They did not speak the languages of the nomadic communities, the nomads. Limited space, limited group, limited number. Despite a limited number, the esteem of the language was so high that with the help of that esteem, by putting in more and more layers of magical, identity in the Veda, this particular class, I do not like to call it Brahminical class because there may be misunderstanding that I am talking about a caste, which I am not doing. But I will say the Vedic class actually managed to create a hierarchy of castes which had come into existence because of the agrarian past, pre-Vedic, pre-Harappan past that India had. And so the Varna system was imposed on people. Those who could recite were at the top. Those who gave security to these people, protected them, became the next Varna. Those who were in the supply line became the next Varna, and others who were not related at all became the Shudras, less than human. This imposition of Varna continued in our society despite opposition, and we heard this morning from, and why that opposition comes in the 6th century before Christ is from Gautam Buddha. The timing is very important. Despite that opposition, the Varna system continued. And because of the unusual esteem that Sanskrit had acquired, it spread. Hegemony does not require massive force from the government to, like the British rule was in India, but we did not have crores of British coming to India. The maximum number of English people in India at any given time in their rule was 1,42,000. But certain ideas, they came here saying that, okay, you were civilized in the past, but you now decline. We'll bring civilization back to you. Civilizing India is our mission. And we accepted that. Hegemony is accepted by consent of the people who readily get enslaved to an idea. Varna was an enslavement for Indian society. And it dehumanized a large number of Indians. Because obviously the Vedic class, the Brahmin class, it's not a caste, Brahmin caste that I'm speaking, please don't misunderstand. I have no love or hate for any particular caste, please. The number was small. The largest number was of the people who got dehumanized, who got oppressed. And it is during the Bhakti period that a challenge arose to that kind of oppression. In order to pose that challenge, while these poets knew Sanskrit, they declined to use Sanskrit. I'll give you examples. Hemachandracharya was mentioned this morning in the first lecture when we heard about Jainism. He was in Gujarat. Hemachandracharya wrote in the 11th century a dictionary, Desi Namamala. While he knew Sanskrit, he chose to write in Prakrit, early form of Gujarati. Or closer home for me, I come from Maharashtra. There was a man called Jnaneshwar, or Jnaneshwar. He rendered the Gita into Marathi. Now, for rendering the Gita into Marathi, he had to know the Gita in Sanskrit. We do not say that he did not know Sanskrit, that he knew only Marathi. He could have become a Sanskrit Pandit as well. He was Brahmin, though outcast. I mean, his own people had thrown him out of the caste because his father, who had taken sannyas, had remarried, it seems. He chose to write in Marathi, and he celebrates his Marathi. He calls it Marathi is another city another city, another society, another realm where people can live, where, and he's, after writing the entire Gita, all of you probably have read the Gita, and in the last three adhyayas of Gita is all about having a life after death, which is, which is taking you higher, about moksha. Jnaneshwar doesn't ask for moksha. He says in Marathi, Duritanse timira jao. Let all this oppressed ones find some sunlight. Those homes which have never seen sunlight, let sunlight enter those homes. So somebody who knows Sanskrit but does not want to repeat the Varna system, and he had suffered himself because of that. Because of Brahminism, he had suffered. So he challenges that. And so does Eknath, who was mentioned in the covered by Madam. Eknath says if Sanskrit was produced by Deva, it was called Deva Bhasha. Was Marathi created by thieves? Sanskrit Devani banavli, to Marathi Chorani banavli ka? Eknath was a Brahmin and he had access to Sanskrit. He did not write in Sanskrit. Can go on giving these examples. But let me turn to Carnatic. It is 11th century where a new spiritual impulse emerges, an extraordinarily unparalleled impulse. And I call it the beginning of modernism in India. And that comes from Basavanna. And Basavanna is saying, I don't recognize caste, I don't recognize Varna, and I don't recognize gender distinction. Women, men of all castes can come here. And he created a people's parliament. Did he not have access to, just 2 centuries before him, what Adi Shankara had created? Obviously he had, because Basavanna himself belonged to an upper caste and had all the wherewithals to study what Adi Shankara would have said. In state after state after state, this happened. In Assam, Shankar Dev, I mentioned that. But in Rajasthan, a Sufi poet brought that. Now, there are 4, you will say, if this was, Bhakti was a rebellion against Sanskrit and the Sanskrit idea of spirituality, not the Upanishads, but the Vedas, then why did they choose the gods like, the godheads like Krishna and Rama and Shiva? And of course, there is another branch which comes up particularly in the medieval times, and that is Nath, the Machindranath and his disciple, Gorakhnath. Gorakhnath, there are 2 Gorakhnaths like Manu. One is mythical Gorakhnath, whose history is traced back by his bhaktas all the way to Shiva and so on. There is another that is historical Gorakhnath, who seems to have dwelt in this part of the world sometime around the 10th or 11th century. So the Nath Pantha, the Tantra, the Shaiva and Vaishnava. Why did the Bhakti poets not give up on this? My answer to that is that they did not have any quarrel with literature of the past. They had quarrel with the social order of the past. They accepted Sufism with as much love as they accepted Tantrism. They did not want to be ruled by gods. They wanted to create a human society which is equal. They did not succeed fully, but they did prepare us for facing the colonial rule. I say this, perhaps this may not be easily accepted, but let me add quickly that I don't think of Tyagaraja in Telangana, Andhra Pradesh as the last of the Bhakti poets, or Ramdas and Tukaram as the last of the Bhakti poets in Maharashtra. I think of Tagore, Gandhi, and Aurobindo as the last of the Bhakti poets. They qualify in every respect to be called Bhakti poets. They were doing precisely what the medieval poets were doing. And therefore, I want to say that all of these, while knowing English in modern times, or Persian in medieval times, or Sanskrit in ancient times, or Sanskrit ancient, they chose to write in their own languages, except Aurobindo, who wrote in English, because his parents had sent him off to Cambridge at the age of 5. I mean, Manchester, London, and Cambridge. The rise of the Indian languages, modern Indian languages. Kannada has an older history. I know it's a classical language, recognized classical language, but its literary history, Nrupatunga, that's about 1,000 years. Marathi has also a literary history, as language history, almost 1800 years or even older, but its history as literature history and literary language history is 1,000 years. Around the time Indians decided to set Sanskrit aside and start speaking in Indian languages, the growth of Indian languages begins. The entire Bhakti writing is in Indian languages, with one exception, and that is a Sanskrit poet who was employed in Shah Jahan's court, wrote poems in Sanskrit in praise of the Sultan, Pandit Jagannath. When Asaf Khan died, he wrote a poem called Asaf Vilas. But out of sense of embarrassment for just writing in Sanskrit, he also added some other languages in between, just as Kalidas used to add other languages in his Sanskrit place. The rise of modern Indian languages at the beginning of the second millennium is also the time when the modern thinking of, when I say modern, I don't mean equal to the West, or please set aside those ideas, by which I mean the importance of rationality over importance of myths. Increase rationality as against myths only. It is. I will stop. You want me to stop now?
Yeah, continue, 10 minutes.
Oh, okay. All right. So, the rise of Indian languages and the rise and the entire Bhakti period are synonymous. Tukaram made Marathi what Marathi is, and so did Kabir and Meera. They did to Hindustani or Hindi literature, and in every state that happens. Or what Kannada is made by the poets of the Lingayat sect, whether it's Shishunal Sharif or Akkama Devi or Vachana literature or whatever. It's the same with Tamil poets, Alwars. I will make my last point. I think as a human being that every civilization should have great spiritual depth. And I'm very proud of the spiritual traditions of India. But I tend to think that the spiritual traditions must be also humanistic traditions. And therefore, I like to go back to Buddhist tradition, which was discussed here. Buddha was opposed during the heydays of Sanskrit, but Buddhism survived in India at least till the 9th century. After the 9th century, the Buddhist sanghas had come into severe disconnect with the people, and therefore Buddhism declined. Bhakti replaced Buddhism in India. Please think of this. Bhakti replaced Buddhism in India. And it is the human dignity and equality of people that Bhakti promoted. A spirituality of higher kind than spirituality which believes in discrimination or promotes discrimination unwittingly though. Spirituality which allows, nurtures equality and dignity is a greater spirituality in my opinion. I may be wrong, but that's my opinion. Aurobindo, Tagore and Gandhi were in my opinion the last Bhakts or Bhakt poet. One whose life is almost synonymous with Vaishnav Jana to tene kaiya or Ishwar Allah tere naam. Another, a translated Kabir, and Aurobindo translated Shaivite poets of Bengal and Orissa, and also some Hindi belt poets into English. All three had spoken before we became independent about the idea of nation. Tagore had promoted an international cultural exchange and Vishwa Bharati. Aurobindo said that a governance like the United Nations with very small local governments, and Gandhi was of course against the idea of this kind of massive nation being imposed on single Rashtra. Bhakti for 1,000 years has taught India, whether you like it or not, you might disagree with me, but this is a historical fact. Bhakti taught India for 1,000 years the importance of diversity and dignity and equality. And I want to congratulate you for bringing to Bengaluru and through the online connectivity to the rest of the country a great opportunity to rethink as to who we are in India and what kind of spirituality defines our nation. I think in celebrating Bhakti, you have opened up a debate which I hope will be taken forward by people in this country who have sympathy for all classes, the downtrodden. The insights of Aurobindo, Gandhi and Tagore got aggregated in our constitution. Ambedkar, directly linked with Buddha in that tradition, said for us that we are all equals and we're all free. We have freedom and equality in this country. The constitution, in my opinion, is the greatest Bhakti poem that India ever produced. Thank you very much.
We express our heartfelt gratitude to Shri G.N. Devy for an intellectually rich and inspiring presentation. Now we have a coffee break. I request all of you to join us for coffee and please reassemble here. Next our panel discussion will going to happen here. Then we will move on to Kincho for our valedictory function and cultural program. Please reassemble here after 10 minutes for our panel, very interesting panel discussion.